welcome back to the Profitable Franchisees podcast. My name is Tracey Leak and I am your host. This podcast is all about helping you with some powerful strategies and stories to help you to grow and build a more successful and more profitable franchise business. And that's a really good point because today we're talking about mastering franchisee profitability. So you're with just me today. I'm going to share some thoughts and ideas to help you to build a more profitable business. Now, the first thing is you have to be okay with us talking about making money, okay? Even though that sounds like a weird thing to say, like, I'm in business, we should be okay talking about profit. I need to cover this off with you because oftentimes we can have a few money issues, and talking about making more profit, you can get to a point where you can go into a bit of self-sabotage. And we're going to have an expert come on and talk to us about self-sabotage in a future episode, so keep an eye out for that. But also you might be limiting yourself with about the amount of profits you can make. It doesn't have to be hard to make more profit. You know, the funny thing is I don't know many franchisees that want to make profit just so they can be like Scrooge McDuck, sitting in a vault of money, okay, throwing that money around. Oftentimes it's about that profit is actually, you know, what you're going to pay your mortgage with, you know, sending your kids to school, paying for your groceries, you know, setting yourself up for retirement. It's your next vacation. You know, profit is a good thing. So I want to help you to be as profitable as possible because the more profit you're making, the more you can help your family or the people around you. You know, if you want to, you could start by giving to charities. You know, there's so much you can do. So how can we get you to be as profitable as possible? It's actually not a selfish goal to be profitable. So the first thing to think about is that we actually need to focus on profit. In business, there's a thing where a lot of people, especially in franchising, we don't talk profit. Oftentimes people are talking revenue or sales or income. So people are wandering around saying, oh yeah, I'm doing 2 million in revenue a year. But what they're forgetting to tell you is it's costing them 2.5 million to do that 2 million in revenue. So they're not actually profitable. You know, profit is actually where we need to be at, but it's not something we often talk about. It's almost like a taboo in society. But I don't want you to do that. I want you to get really comfortable with understanding your profit. And so first of all, we have to focus on it. Don't focus on sales. Sales is the activity you do to generate profit, okay? Your revenue, that's a milestone you hit to achieve your profit goals. Don't set a revenue goal, set a profit goal, okay? And then you understand the revenue you need to make to achieve that profit goal. You know, I've been in a lot of franchise groups where they might reward, you know, highest gross sales turnover or revenue, which is fine. That's great. Absolutely. But don't get upset if you're not winning that award. I was at a conference one time and a franchisee was talking to me and they were talking about another franchisee and saying, oh, look at their sales and stuff. And I said, well, look, they were really beating themselves up. And I said, look, to be honest, you're actually more profitable. Okay. And they said, what, as a percentage? And I said, no, as a dollar amount. You are more profitable than that person. Don't get caught up in the vanity of having a big revenue. Think about your profitability. And that's where you should be focusing. Focus on profit. But you need to first of all start measuring it. Anything measured or focused on will improve. Think, if your goal is to lose weight, what's the first thing you're going to do? Well, you're going to go and step on the scales. And in fact, you're probably going to step on the scales once a day to see how your progress is going. Because if you don't want to lose weight, you pretty much don't step on the scales. But if you want to lose weight, you're going to step on those scales. So you need to think that with profitability. You need to be looking at your numbers at an absolute minimum once a week. Okay? No, right, yep, this is how much we did in sales. Yep, that means we're on track for our profitability. Yep, these were our labor costs or these were our expenses. Understand where you're at. Are we keeping our cost of goods or our gross profit margin in place? Don't overcomplicate it, but you should be looking at your numbers every single week minimum. A lot of franchisees think that when you're putting your sales figures into the franchisor, it's just so that they can calculate your royalties. Absolutely, that's a part of what's happening. But I like franchisees to turn that mindset around. Instead of thinking that you're putting in a sales report once a week for the franchisor, I want you to think, oh no, they're just gaining access to it. That sales report is for me. I'm going to be looking at those numbers every single week to make sure I'm on target. Because really, that's what you want to do. You want to understand the numbers in your business. You know, what are your goals? What do you need to achieve to get to your profit? And just break it down into bite-sized pieces. If you go back and listen to the first episode in season 2 of the podcast, I did an interview with Dan Cahill from Jim's Mowing. And he talked about when he was building his business, he knew he needed to do $700 a day. That was his goal. So that was his activity goal. He knew he needed to do $700 a day to achieve the profit amounts that he needed for his business. And that's what I want you to think about. I work with another group where we talk about like the number of appointments they need to do. They know if they're doing, 5 appointments a week, they know they're going to convert, at least 2 out of those 5. And those 2 appointments are going to be worth X number of dollars each, which means that their revenue will be this much and they know that their profitability will be this much. So when you can start to think like that, turn your goals into an activity, it's far easier. People talk to me all the time about, we're having trouble goal setting. I haven't met a business owner yet who has trouble setting goals. What they actually have trouble with is what activity they need to do to achieve that goal. So it's not actually about goal setting. It's about how do we achieve the plan or the activity goals to achieve that final goal. But in business, you really need to have profit goals and have a focus on it. So break your numbers down into bite-sized pieces. My favorite sayings, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If you keep listening to the podcast, you're going to hear me say that lots of times, so get ready for it. Break it down into bite-sized pieces and then turn that goal into an activity. This is what will help you to increase your profitability. If you don't have a focus on it, it will not improve. The same as if you need to lose weight, we need to break it down into little targets and have an activity of standing on the scales every day. What do we need to do? I need to walk for 20 minutes a day. I need to drink 6 glasses of water. I need to eat these 3 core meals a day with 2 snacks in between. It's an activity to get the result. So break it down. What's your profit goal? What's the activity? What are the milestones you need to achieve? And break it down into a bite-sized piece. So like for Dan, it was a daily target. For you, it might be a weekly target. It might be an activity target that you know that if you do this activity, then you will reach your goals. So be really focused on that. The other trick is to really review your P&L. Now, most business owners don't actually understand how to read their profit and loss. Okay, it's something you do for tax purposes. It's something that the accountant does or your bookkeeper does, but that doesn't mean they actually understand that it's actually a working document that you can use to build and grow your business. So I have lots of hints and tips around P&Ls, but I'm just going to share one with you today. And that is turn your expenses into a percentage of your revenue, okay? So let's use wages as an example, labor costs, because it's one of the easiest to do. So say, you could turn it into a percentage and say, right, currently of all my revenue, 30% of that revenue goes to paying wages. Now, you can talk to your franchisor and find out some benchmarking. So what does benchmarking mean? Benchmarking means what's kind of the average across the group. In most franchise groups, when they do benchmarking, they do it as an average across all franchisees. Speak to your field development manager or your field support manager, your business coach, whoever it is that's helping you in the franchise group. When I do benchmarking, I like to benchmark against success. So I want to know what's the top 10% of the franchisees doing. So if we look at the most profitable franchisees, the top 10 or the top 10% of most profitable franchisees, we might find out that on average, their labor costs are actually sitting somewhere between 25 and 28%. So if you're sitting at 30% of your revenue going to labor costs, it means either you're overstaffed or you're not bringing in enough business. Because sometimes you need staff just to have the business open. Okay, sometimes you can't cut it. There'll be a minimum amount of staff that you need. You want to think about how can we increase the revenue to make our percentage of sales of our staff less. Or I need to look at it and go, hey, maybe I'm overstaffed or I'm paying my staff too much. Like you've got too expensive a staff who are not efficient, and they're not giving you a return on investment. Look through all of your major expenses and look at your percentages because, if you can reduce your expenses by 1%, so say you take your labour from 30% to 29%, and you do that across 5 to 10 areas, you can increase your profitability by 5 to 10% just by looking at those things. So the way to increase your profitability is two ways. Either reduce your expenses or increase your revenue. And to be perfectly honest, the quickest and the fastest way to increase your profitability is to increase your revenue, is to do more business. But at the same time, don't ignore reducing your costs. You want to have good control on your costs. Now, remember too, let's use the staffing as an example again, your labour costs. You also need a minimum percentage, okay? So say the most profitable franchisees in your group are doing 25 to 28% of their revenue is going into labour costs, and you're currently sitting at 30%. There should be a minimum as well. It might be, hey, if you're spending less than, say, 22% on labour costs, well, that's as big of a problem as it is being over that same percentage in benchmarking. Why? Because if you haven't got enough staff on, then you're losing customer service and you're going to lose repeat business. The magic to any business with profitability is repeat business. It is 6 times cheaper to get a past or an existing customer to buy again than it is to get a new customer. And so if your labour costs are too low, that means that you're not actually servicing your customers and people don't come back, okay? If they're not getting the service, if it's taking too long or they're being underserviced, they'll just start to get a bit blah and leave, all right? But that's where we're going to lose profitability. That is the magic to any business, is repeat business. So if you've got not enough staff on, you can actually damage your business as much as being overstaffed. So know your minimum and maximum levels on each percentage. It's amazing though, when you actually go through your P&L and you start looking at all of the percentages, how you can find how things have just blown out. The one I always look at is like the subscriptions line, because sometimes in your subscriptions, you start to go, what am I subscribed to all these things for? Like, this is not very cost effective, like stuff happens and it adds up before you know it. But if you're not looking at your P&L, then you're not actually stepping on the scales like you would to lose weight. Your P&L is the scales for your profitability goal, the same as scales are for a weight loss goal. So you want to be reviewing your P&L. And to be honest, it's just over time you get better and better and better at it. I like to turn some of my P&L figures into graphs. I'm quite a visual person. So sometimes it's easier for me to see my profitability levels as a line graph than it is as just a number, okay? Because that way I can actually see the trends of what's happening. You might turn your revenue into a line graph so you can see that. Break your revenue down into different products or services. Which is your most profitable product or service? You should absolutely be across the board on that. You should know which service or which product is your most profitable and which is your least profitable. Because if you're going to promote these, let's promote your most profitable product, okay? If you're going to go do marketing, let's do it on your most profitable product or service, because that way you'll bring in more customers at the highest profit level. Don't market to customers on your lowest profit margin item, because that's not going to it'll increase your profit a bit, but it's not going to give you the most bang for your buck. So understanding that. So what have we talked about so far? Just as a little recap, profit's a good thing, okay? You want to have a focus on your profit as the end result. You want to be measuring it. Know your numbers, break them down and turn your goals into activities so you know what you need to be doing to reach your profit. Doing a regular review on your P&L, okay? Minimum once a month. You should probably look at your P&L at the end of every month would be my minimum. Okay. Once a year is way near enough. I think quarterly is even not really enough because you're going to miss it, minimum monthly. Okay. As a quick step, either turn all your expenses into percentages of your revenue. And oftentimes in your programs, you can actually add a column and it will put that percentage in for you. Just ask your bookkeeper about it, how to add in the percentage column. So you don't even have to sit with a calculator and calculate it. You can actually have that come out. Find out some benchmarks of the most profitable franchisees in your franchise group. Not the average. We want to aim for success. We want to model after success. Okay, that might not be a number your franchisor has, but ask them if they can find out for you. Okay, most franchisors have access to all of the P&Ls. They don't have to tell you who's in that top 10%. They don't have to tell you the actual numbers. They're just sharing a percentage with you. But it's a good one to give you a benchmark to work towards. Look at, your return on investment of things you're doing, knowing which is your most profitable product or service will really help you so that you'll get a better return on investment for your work. Keeping a focus on that repeat business. Watch your cash flow. Cash flow is not profitability. You could be profitable in your business, but actually not have good cash flow management. So if you want to be more profitable, I highly recommend getting really good at your cash flow. It also reduces your stress a lot in your business. So having a cash flow projection will really help you. And basically, when it breaks down, a cash flow projection is saying, hey, these are my expenses and when they're due. Okay, so a lot of your expenses you'd know. You'd know pretty much on average how much you're paying in wages every week. You'd know what your lease is every week. You'd know on average what your royalty fees are. But what you want to work out then is what are your goals for your revenue? Especially in businesses where you've got to pay for things up front and then you get paid later, you want to have good cash flow management. Cash flow management will really help you to become more profitable because you start getting all over your numbers, okay? You start understanding where money's coming in and out, and naturally that means that you end up with more profit. You also want to think about setting up an account where you can put your profit aside, okay? Because otherwise you get to the end of the year and go, where is that profit? I once had a client who was hilarious, who went to the accountant at the end of financial year. They'd done their tax. And the accountant said to them, hey, well done. You increased your profit. It's this amount. And my client sat there in front of the accountant and said, oh, so that profit, do you give that to me in a check or are you going to put that into my bank account? The accountant looked at him and went, what do you mean? They said, because I've got no idea where that money's gone. So we had to work on their cash flow management. And one of our strategies, we had a tax management account. So they were putting their tax aside. So when it came to tax time, the money was sitting there ready to go. But the other thing we did was we set up a profit account. And so they would start to actually draw their profit out of their business because they started to get their cash management in control. So they were taking their profit out and putting it in a separate account. So they weren't using it for cash flow. They were keeping it separate as profit. To be honest, that took us, I think it was about a year, 18 months to get to a point where they could do that because we were starting from below zero. We started in a negative cash flow situation and getting it to a positive cash flow situation where they could start putting their profit aside. Okay, just as a side note. So not only do you need to understand which products or services are giving you the biggest or the best profit margins, also work out which month, what's your flow of your business? Because no business is straight across the line. You're going to have peaks and dips. And where your greatest profit potential actually is in the dips. Okay, so most people think increasing your profit is just working across the board. Like oftentimes people think even, I just need more customers. Sometimes it's not about you need more customers. It means we need all of our customers just to come back one more time a year. And that would actually generate more profit. But when you actually look at it, and it's easiest to do it from like a revenue line graph or a profit line graph, you'll have some peaks and dips. And instead of aiming to make the peak even higher, look at the dip and say, what can we do? So I worked with a franchise group and we discovered across the board, they had 3 dips in the year. They had one in February, they had one in July, and they had one like halfway through August, start of September. Okay, so sort of in there. So we started working on strategies. We started with the February one first. What could we do to market the business to bring in more business in February? Okay. Now, the reason being is you think you've got a fixed amount of costs in your business. So, we know as a minimum, you've got to pay your lease. You're going to have a certain minimum amount of wages you need to pay. There's going to be certain expenses you need to pay. But say, I'm going to give some numbers here. Say, the minimum amount you need is 10,000. And in some months you're making 20,000, but in this month you're only making 12,000. Well, you may not need any extra staff. You don't need to pay any more on your lease. Your phone's not going to cost any more. There's certain fixed expenses that are not going to increase, but you've got that potential to do more business, but it's almost like pure profit, like it's gross profit coming straight through. Like you don't need any more staff to service an extra 10 customers in that month because your staff are not fully busy. You've got that profit potential. I hope this is making sense, especially in an audio. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you need to see a visual of it. But sometimes it's the dips because you've already covered your fixed expenses. It doesn't cost you any extra to do more business in that month. So therefore, any work you do is at a higher profit margin because you've covered your fixed expenses. Sometimes if you're at a peak and you try and grow that peak, that might mean, I need to put on another staff member. Well, you've just sapped out a whole stack of your profit. So in that franchise group where we worked on the 3 dips, one of the dips was a seasonal thing that was a bit hard to work on, but we got there. But that's how they actually, I think they trebled their revenue and their profits by us working on those 3 dips. We didn't work on the peaks, we worked on the dips because we knew that was a profit center, that was a profit potential area. So I've given you a stack of information here in a very short time. You might need to go back and listen to this again. But the number one key that I would suggest if you want to be more profitable is 2 things. First of all, have a focus on profitability, okay? Work out that. We want to work on profitability. Put that front of mind. It's not about the biggest revenue. It's about the greatest profit amount. The second thing I would say is you want to break your numbers down and turn them into activities. What do we need to do each and every day or each and every week to actually start reaching our profit goals? Hey, you know what? We need, 5 new customers a week, which means we need to have 10 new appointments a week. Great. What marketing do we need to do to get 10 appointments a week, to stay at a 50% conversion rate, to get 5 new customers who on average are going to buy X dollars amount of goods or services? Okay, break it down. Because if you understand the activity you need to do, that will actually help you to grow and build your profit levels. And as I said, having a look at your P&L, reviewing that, watching your cash flow control and looking for the profit potential areas, those dips, and understanding what your profit centers are, which products or services are your greatest in your profit. But making a focus on it, measuring it, and knowing what activity you need to do, break it down, will give you the greatest potential to increase the profitability of your business. Now, as I said, this podcast is called Profitable Franchisees. So, we're going to be talking about making more profit a lot, but I hope that this is a good starting introduction to that. If you want some more help around profitability, then make sure that you're signed up to the Franchisee Profit Pulse. It's my fortnightly newsletter. Again, 100% free. Just come over to my website, traceyleak.com, and you can sign up there for it. It's a great companion to go with the podcast so that you're getting more information to help and grow you a more profitable business. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Keep an eye out. We'll be talking about profitability a lot. See you guys.